On January 13, 1999, the streets of Baltimore's Woodlawn neighborhood fell silent as the body of Hee Min Lee, a 24-year-old high school student, was discovered in Leakin Park, a sprawling woodland that would become the backdrop for one of America's most debated murder cases. The shock reverberated far beyond Maryland, igniting a firestorm of suspicion, media scrutiny, and a relentless quest for truth that would later be chronicled in the groundbreaking podcast serial. Hee Min Lee was born in 1975 to Korean-American parents who had immigrated to the United States in the 1960s. A diligent student and varsity track star at Woodlawn High School, she was known for her bright smile and ambition to attend college. In the spring of 1998, she began dating Adnan Syed, a fellow student and classmate who was also a member of the school's varsity baseball team. Their relationship, described by friends as typical teenage romance, was marked by late-night outings, shared classes, and an intense, sometimes volatile, dynamic that would later become a focal point in the investigation. On the night of January 13, Hee's mother, Soon-Ya Lee, called the police after her daughter failed to return home from a scheduled meeting with her boyfriend. The call set off a frantic search. Friends were questioned, cars were examined, and the local community rallied. Hours later, a park ranger discovered a pair of shoes near the Riverdale area of Leakin Park, and a short distance away, the partially clothed body of Hee Min Lee was found, still wearing her school-issued shoes. The cause of death was later determined to be strangulation. Detectives quickly zeroed in on Adnan Syed, who was the last known person to see Hee alive. The key pieces of evidence against him were largely circumstantial. A cell phone tower analysis placed his phone near the park around the time of the murder. A testimony from a classmate named Jay Wilds claimed that Adnan confided in him about the killing, and that Wilds helped transport Hee's body, and an alleged punch-in at the time of the murder was suggested by a forensic analyst. However, no physical evidence, such as DNA, fingerprints, or the murder weapon, was ever found linking Adnan directly to the crime scene. The trial began in February 2000 at the Baltimore Circuit Court. The prosecution, led by Assistant State's Attorney William F. Billy Monahan, painted a narrative of premeditated murder driven by jealousy and a desire to end a relationship that was slipping away. They relied heavily on Wilds' testimony, which described a night in which he and Adnan allegedly buried Hee's body under a concrete slab, later moving it to a different site in the park. The defense, headed by attorney Christina Gutierrez, argued that the case was built on unreliable testimony, flawed cell tower data, and a rush to judgment. They highlighted inconsistencies in Wilds' statements, the absence of forensic evidence, and raised concerns about the handling of the case files. After a week of testimony, the jury deliberated for just over 4 hours before returning a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and false larceny. The judge sentenced Adnan Syed to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The conviction was celebrated by many as a swift delivery of justice for Hee Min Lee's family, yet it also sowed the seeds of doubt in the hearts of those who would later question the integrity of the proceedings. The story resurfaced in 2014, when Sarah Koenig's investigative series, Serial, aired as the first season of a podcast that would redefine true crime storytelling. Koenig's meticulous examination of the case, spanning 10 episodes, highlighted the ambiguities in the evidence, the questionable credibility of key witnesses, and the potential mishandling of the cell tower analysis. Listeners were drawn into a narrative that seemed to straddle the line between guilt and innocence, prompting a nationwide debate about the criminal justice system's fallibility. In the wake of the podcast, Adnan's legal team filed a series of appeals, arguing that his original defense attorney had been ineffective, that crucial evidence had been withheld, and that the cell tower data had been misrepresented. In 2016, a Baltimore judge granted a new trial based on the ineffective counsel claim, but the decision was later reversed by the Maryland Court of Special Appeals. The case continued to ascend through the appellate system, reaching the Maryland Court of Appeals, which in March 2018 denied a new trial, citing insufficient proof that the defense's performance had altered the outcome. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case in 2019, leaving the conviction intact. However, the legal battle was far from over. In 2022, a judge vacated Adnan's conviction after a federal judge ruled that the state's failure to disclose evidence that could have impeached the reliability of the cell tower data violated Brady obligations. This decision was a watershed moment, reopening discussions about whether the evidence was ever sufficient to support a conviction. Yet later that year, the Maryland Court of Appeals reinstated the conviction, stating that the procedural errors did not rise to the level of a reversal. The murder of Hee Min Lee remains an unresolved scar on the community. Her family, while grateful for the attention the case has received, continues to grapple with the loss of their daughter and the lingering uncertainty surrounding the circumstances of her death. For Adnan Syed, the legal pendulum swings between hope and despair, as each new motion and hearing offers both a glimmer of potential exoneration and a reminder of the system's complexities. Subscribe to The Verdict for more stories like this.